Doctors of Reddit, what is the funniest thing you've heard someone say while under the effects of anesthesia? I feel like I got hit by a train. Guy actually got hit by a ducking train. After a really bad car accident. I was pinned in the car for an hour while they cut me out. Apparently. The EMT, who I knew from high school, asked how I felt. I said I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. Also, in shock and very injured. Insisted that I could climb out myself if everybody just backed up. Then, on the helicopter ride, I asked if we would have flying over a volcano and if I could look out the window. Pain makes me weird, I guess. On the other side, when I got my tonsils removed, the doctor said we call this Jackson juice, as he hooked up the anesthesia to the IV. Because this is what Michael Jackson healed himself with. I then woke up with no tonsils. I took care of an 11-year-old boy in the ER a little while back. I gave him ketamine for a fracture reduction. Or in other words, setting and splinting of a broken bone. As he was coming around, he started with typical stream of consciousness babbling, and then he seemed to snap awake to say, "I'm duckinly I'm gonna do so many drugas when I get older," to the amusement of his parents. They thought it was funny and cute, but I'm pretty sure I created a monster. I got my wisdom teeth out too. Had an IV. For the first time. I was 16 yo. All I remember was feeling great. I mean seriously amazing. When I sorta came to, I remember asking how much longer till it's over. And they said we're done. The nurse brought me out to the car with my parents. And helped me out to the car. And on the car ride home I asked why the nurse was so friendly. My parents told me that I confess my love for short-haired brunettes. And that she would be my wife because she was perfect and I loved her. Haha, I had no game at the time. While having dental work done under the influence of laughing gas. I, female. Mid-teens at the time, tried very hard to flirt with her, also female. Married, dentist. I was not in any way subtle. She was not at all amused. Awkward. Also, not anesthesia but dial-ordered. I called my husband from the ER once rambling about how totally amazing it was that we have fingers, they're so helpful. And they're like, always there. They're like little friends that you get to carry around with you everywhere. It didn't take him too long to figure out they had me high as a kite, but he was super confused at first. As I was passing out to get my wisdom teeth done, the nurse who was putting me out said something about "you may feel an itching or burning in your genitals, please resist the urge to scratch it," and I answered with no problem. "You can take care of my genitals for me," and she answered with, "maybe I should make it so you don't wake up," as my eyes closed, and that's the last thing I remembered. I'm sure the next hour or two was terrifying as I contemplated whether she'd healed me and if I deserved to die. My boyfriend, as he was being wheeled into recovery, yelled to me, "Honey, you can call me Shrek from now on." He has no idea why he wanted me to call him Shrek. I had to have surgery a few months later. And when I had woken up, I called my boyfriend on the hospital phone and told him he could call me Fiona from now on. When I woke from having my wisdom teeth removed, I asked the nurse to take me to the beach and release me back into the ocean so I could be with my people. She kept refusing. So I started accusing her of fiddling with me whilst I was asleep. I ended up getting moved to a different recovery area, where I was then asked to be quiet because I thought I was listening to Nicki Minaj. But in fact it was just me slaughtering the lyrics to an imaginary beat. After I got my teeth removed and woke up, I had an uncontrollable urge to drive. I had recently got my permit. I was like, "Let me drive, I want to go." My mom had to physically restrain me by putting her forearm against my throat against a wall. The nurse also had to help restrain me. I cooled down after like 5 minutes of this. Not a doctor, but my dad had been given the goofy juice and was about to be wheeled into surgery. He looks at the anesthesiologist and asks, "Will the nurses have big titties?" My mom and his mom were in the room, laughing hysterically. The anesthesiologist chuckled and said, "Okay, yeah. You're ready for surgery." My mom has a sort of cute one. After a recent surgery she woke up crying and asking for my dad. 31 years of marriage and still stupid in love with each other. There's a cute video online where a woman goes in to see her husband after surgery. He tells her that she's the most beautiful person he's ever seen. Not aware that she's his wife. She breaks the news that they are married and he says, "I hit the jackpot." Not a doctor. But my girlfriend broke her ankle pretty badly in April. I showed up in the ER shortly after she'd arrived. And had to step out briefly so that the nurses could set the bones back. They had to give her something pretty intense for the pain. Believe it was ketamine. I came back in after it was done. And hilarity ensued. She forgot repeatedly that she'd even broken her ankle. She constantly worried that she was swearing too much. There was a little boy in the next bed. Which she was not. She thought that reality had broken and that there were 8 universes all at once. Edit. Thus comment made it to list on knowable. D. Looks like I'm the only doctor who has responded to this so far. For general anesthesia and even conscious sedation. People don't usually say funny things. Most people's funny comment stories are from being on pain medications. Which is analgesia. Not anesthesia. I literally sedate people all the time and they just pass out. Now. People with hospital delirium. Those stories are funny. Not a doctor but an EMT. When I was doing my clinical rotations there was a lady who was in a room yelling about how she knows who she is. She stated her full name. Age. Height. Weight. Where she was and why. I thought she was completely lucid until she started shouting, "I ain't no prostitute but can I sell this pussy?" There was another guy that also seemed pretty lucid in the emergency room but then he said, "Can someone tell Emmy why the guy next to Emmy is pregnant? It's freaking Emmy out." I recently had to have a tooth removed and while under laughing gas. After however long of them scraping against my teeth. I declared that I knew how they came up with dubstep music. The nurse pulled out of my mouth and asked what I had said. I responded with, "You know dubstep music is right?" And she laughed and nodded. Whoever made it must have made it after having a tooth pulled and hearing the wiki wire. She literally had to stop working because she laughed so hard. I headbutted a nurse after a surgery. Trying to decide whether that's worse than what I did. Which was to projectile vomit all over a nurse and simultaneously expel my catheter. I don't handle general anesthesia very well. When I woke up after my appendectomy, my mom says that I couldn't stop talking about how I no longer was wearing underwear. I then proceeded to tell every person who came to see me in the hospital that I was not wearing underwear for the next 8 hours. I recently had open heart surgery. When you wake up they give you a heart-shaped pillow to hold onto and put pressure on your chest, which feels amazing. When I woke up I threw the pillow at my mum and told her that whoever came up with that idea was the most ridiculous person and screaming that no one wants something on their chest after it's been broken. That pillow ended up being my favorite thing and I kept it with me 24/7 for a couple of weeks. Mom, your face looks kind of swollen and fat. Dad, you look kinda fat. With a PH. Nice save, Dad. Nice save. Not me but my friend got knocked unconscious and hurt her neck so they gave her some pain medications. When they took her for a CT she was asking why and the nurse told her they had to take a picture of her brain and she asked if she should smile. Not a doctor but my best friend broke his collarbone and here is a list of the best things he said. We walk into the emergency room and he is saying hello to everyone, then he sees this nurse and blurts out, "Wow, you are very attractive." Anytime we were alone together he would whisper, more of a yell than a whisper, to me about how much he wanted to duck this girl he had a crush on. Do you think lunchboxes are sad when they are empty? Shit man, I'm so ducking horny. The ambulance driver was sitting right next to him when he said this. I love my grandmother so much, she is so lovely. Have you met her? Wow, she is great. He was talking to a nurse, not me. My girlfriend after wisdom teeth removal. Do you think they call it sand because it's between the sea and the land? God love her. She was a riot the whole way home. My friend's sister was slowly waking up after a surgery and was still a bit out of it from the meds. Her family came into the room and asked how she was feeling, and her response was, "I feel fine, but man, that nurse is a rick," as the nurse was standing next to her. Luckily the nurse was able to laugh about it with them. Underwent a procedure that required sedation with ketamine. I screamed for half an hour in the post-op area. I scared the patients and fought off the staff. Little 5-foot tall me. When I stopped tripping, the staff told me that they had to use enough sedatives and I ordered to take down a grown man 3 times my size. I had surgery for endometriosis. Sucked, but it is what it is. So there I am. Just coming out of the anesthesia. And my hands are just going everywhere. Like they have a mind of their own. I was rubbing my face and mumbling, and then I felt an itch by my pubic area. So naturally I tried to scratch it. I then realized that they shaved my pubes. I began crying and moaning about how my pubes were gone. That it was going to take forever to grow them back. And that I really missed them. At one point I believe I was sobbing that they needed to put them back on me. I'm really fun after surgeries and epidurals. Apparently when I was getting my septum fixed, I yelled at the doctor for lying to me about how the stuff prior to the anesthesia would taste. That was not a banana. You liar. Have you eaten a banana before? Then post-surgery I reportedly burst into tears over a particularly heartwarming episode of In the Night Garden because the Tombliboos couldn't find their toothbrushes. My dad thought this was all great fun. Finally was abandoned by family. At which point I asked some poor nurse to give me my phone. And everyone in my recent contacts list got selfies. Focused on my nose. Followed by messages about how these drugas were funny. I was 21. Was getting tonsils removed, I think. And put under anesthesia. And the dentist was wearing one of those colorful shirts with butterflies on it. I apparently was super into those butterflies and poked her breasts the entire operation, saying what pretty butterflies. Somehow, mom was semi-impressed. Finally, my time to shine. When I was 13 I was in NICU for a long time and was just coming out of a coma when this occurred. For reference, I was just about the shyest kid you'd ever meet. Obviously I don't remember this, but it's been confirmed by my mother and plenty of nurses that at one point, not long after waking up from my coma, I sat straight up, looked my nurse in the eye and said, "Hey you. I'm gonna duck your boyfriend later. Also should be noted I'm a les." When I woke up from surgery, I was hitting on all the nurses. Young, old, man, woman. Didn't matter. Everyone got called beautiful that day. I do some weird shit under anesthesia. After having my wisdom teeth removed I remember the nurse saying that I would remember that part. It became my only mission in life to remember that part. I really hate being told what I can and cannot do. After having my arm set after I broke it they gave me ketamine. I actually really liked the process at first. My arm felt really warm and I was definitely tripping. I think my eyes were open the whole time and I was looking at the ceiling light. I told my wife that I loved her about 100 times, and then as I was processing what was going on I started saying that everything was crunchy and mechanical. Last, after being put under for brain surgery I woke up in a really pissed off mood. I do not remember this part. Anyway, I was pissed that the nurses wouldn't give me ice chips. I was really thirsty. My throat was dry and these highly trained medical professionals had the audacity to not give me crunched ice. Not a doctor, but recently had surgery because my ovary was in the wrong place, as well as a bunch of endometriosis. I barely remember going into the operating room because when they were prepping me they gave me something to calm down. As soon as I woke up I straight off asked to see my so. They wouldn't let him in. So then whenever I saw a nurse I kept asking them to thank doctors for me. I just really wanted the doctors to know how much I appreciated their effort. And that seemed so darn important at the time. Obligatory, not a doctor. But a few years ago before my hip surgery, the nurses were wheeling me back to the OR when I remembered my purse was underneath the bed. They handed it off to my dad and I while under whatever loopy meds they put in my IV prior to full sedation, made a joke about how the purse matched his outfit. One of the nurses made a reference to The Hangover, and I followed with, "It's not a purse. It's his satchel. Indiana Jones has one." They all started hysterically laughing, which of course set me off too. It's a joke I still would have made sober, but seemed funnier since I was high as a kite at the moment.